All right. My name is Emily Peterson-Casson. I am the digital rights advocate at Public Citizen. I'm filling in for the beautiful Cheyenne, who worked so hard on this rally and then at the last minute could not come. So she sends her regards to all of you that she worked with. Thank you for coming. Well, I'll tell you why we're here. We're here because Facebook's shareholder meeting is coming up in a few days. And this is their office in DC. This is where they try to pull the levers of power in order to make sure that they are not held accountable. But we are here to hold them accountable because we are going to make Mark Zuckerberg listen. That's what we're going to do today. All right, so Zach, you are first. Here you are. This is Zach from Accountable Tech.
Thanks so much. Didn't realize I was first in the lineup, but
Sorry.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks everyone for coming out. I think it's so important that we speak out at this critical moment ahead of the Facebook shareholder meeting. 18 years ago, a young man named Mark Zuckerberg launched a website in his college dormitory called The Facebook. I can't say for certain what his initial intentions were then and there, but 18 years later, we know for certain that his intentions have been all along the pursuit of relentless growth and profit at any cost. He transformed what was a simple website into a global social media networking empire. From the college dorm room to today, Mark Zuckerberg has and remains completely in charge of Facebook. He is the founder, chairman, and CEO. As the majority shareholder of the company, he is effectively his own boss and effectively accountable to no one. So let's be clear, Mark Zuckerberg is responsible for his company's relentless pursuit of growth and profit at a terrible price to individuals, communities, and democracies around the world. Facebook makes 98% of its profits from a toxic business model called surveillance advertising. They make money by hooking users for as long as possible to learn as much as possible about who you are to run as many hyper-targeted ads at you as possible. It's a vicious cycle that elevates emotive content, whether that be conspiracy, disinformation, discrimination, hate, or violence. Mark Zuckerberg is responsible for perpetuating and refining this toxic business model of surveillance advertising into a science of user and data exploitation. Facebook, time and time again, when faced with tough decisions, has chosen profit over people. A few examples. What did Facebook do when their own internal researchers found that their platform Instagram was harmful for young users, with 32% of teenage girls saying that the platform made them feel worse about their bodies? They hid that internal research from the public, from users, from parents, and elected officials. What did Facebook do in Ethiopia when the platform was and still is being used to incite violence against ethnic minorities? They hired a few content moderators in the country for $1.50 an hour and sat back as civil war seized the country. What did Facebook do when the video of the recent Buffalo shooting continued circulating on their platform, and it still is today? They're actually running ads next to it. We need to be really honest today about how Facebook's pursuit of growth and profit knows no bounds. Mark Zuckerberg will stop at nothing for the next dollar. As the founder, chairman, and CEO, he is responsible for his company fueling the spread of disinformation, hate, extremism, violence, on and offline. Mark Zuckerberg is totally unaccountable to any government, his shareholders, and the public, but change is coming. The era of self-regulation is over. It's time for Facebook shareholders to speak up and make Mark listen. It's time for the public to demand action from their elected officials. It's time for Congress to rein in big tech's monopoly power and societal harms. Congress can and must pass the historic bipartisan antitrust legislation in the American Innovation and Choice Online Act and the Open App Markets Act. Just because Mark Zuckerberg isn't accountable today to anyone, that doesn't mean we have to accept that. We can change that. We can fight for a future we all believe in, and a future where hopefully we are all safer with a healthier information ecosystem for our society and democracy. Thanks for being here. Back to you.
All right. Thank you so much. This is Eric from Friends of the Earth.
Hello. We're all here to make Mark listen to the negative effects Facebook is having on issues we all care deeply about. Issues like climate change. I'm Eric Pica, and I'm president of Friends of the Earth. And we have spent years documenting the way climate disinformation has been amplified on Facebook. This isn't a simple conversation where people are having a legitimate scientific debate. We're talking about blatant lies that are being given a giant megaphone. The factual conversations are getting silenced by the over-amplification that prevents our freedom of speech. Take this story as an example. Last February, Texas experienced an extreme weather event caused by climate change. But more specifically, the failure was caused by the state's outdated oil and gas infrastructure and its outdated power grid. But what was the narrative on social media? What was the narrative on Facebook? It was caused by renewable energy. That may seem preposterous. Texas, the oil and gas state, shut down by renewable energy. But somehow this lie became a fact. It started when the user named Oilfield Rando is talking about renewable energy. What he did is he took a picture of a frozen windmill. But that frozen windmill was a picture from Sweden, taken in 2015. But that fact didn't stop it from going viral. Within 4 days, it took off. Tucker Carlson put it on air. It became a talking point from the Texas governor. This story was falsely amplified by social media algorithms over and over and over again, and it overwhelmed the entire conversation online. And the worst part about it is that Facebook, Meta, and this is why we had to make Mark listen, did nothing. In our research, 99% of these fake windmill images were not given a fact-check label. Despite tons of real-time evidence, Facebook and Meta did nothing. And what's the impact? We cannot save our planet from climate change if the debates are completely overwhelmed by false disinformation. We have to make Mark listen to this. Again, this is not a simple two-person disagreement. This is an industrial-scale disinformation operation being facilitated by Facebook. And look, disinformation on climate change isn't real. The oil and gas industry has been doing this for the last 50 years. But what's new is they get free advertising because Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook and Meta want to make profit. That's what's new here. They need to fact check what's going on. They need to commit to taking down climate disinformation. Facebook is now one of the last bastions of climate denialism. And it is time that we make Mark listen. We need Facebook to stop overwhelming the conversation about climate change, its impacts, the science. And we need Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg to stop overwhelming every other conversation that we need to have in this country that is economic justice, racial justice, climate justice oriented. It's time to make Mark listen. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Randy Weingarten from the American Federation of Teachers. Yes.
Thank you.
Woo!
So, 10, 20 years ago, when Facebook started, we all loved sharing pictures of our dogs and cats and family events and all of these things, and thought it was pretty cool that we would have a way of sharing with people who we know from far away or from close up. But if you spend any time in schools these days, particularly in light of the amount of time kids spent on the internet and on their devices in the last 2 years, you see some very, very serious differences from the way in which Facebook operated 20 or so years ago to the way it operates right now. Let me talk about it from the perspective of children. Instagram algorithms are driving young girls to content that promotes eating disorders and unhealthy body images. Platforms are finding kids who are lonely and scared and confused, and then sending them more content to amplify these insecurities and make them feel more desperate. We've heard from teachers and principals and parents who have pleaded for Facebook to block anonymous accounts because these accounts are being used to bully or humiliate students on account of a student's identity, whether that identity is gay or Muslim, on account of a child sleeping or having a bad hair day or just being themselves. And we've watched Facebook do absolutely nothing. Mark, do absolutely nothing. You've done absolutely nothing to curb the creation of new groups that target kids for harassment. That's why I am here today. I'm here today, putting my notes away. I'm here today to make Mark listen. Listen to the thousands of children who have been hurt and abused by what Instagram is doing right now. Listen to the parents and the teachers who are trying to create safe and welcoming environments. Only when kids go home and watch this on their Instagram account and feel bad about themselves. Mark, you have to listen to the communities who need Facebook to actually operate in a humane, real way, not in a way that creates profits over people. That is why the teachers of the United States are here to say, make Mark listen. It is time for self-regulation to stop. It is time to do what Europe is doing. These tech companies are actually abusing kids with their algorithms and their profit-driven surveillance data making. We need to make Mark listen and care about our children and their humanity. Thank you.
Yes. Yes. Okay. The Reverend Jennifer Butler, the CEO of Faith in Public Life, who has a great fashion sense.
Awesome. Yeah, and thank you to Randy Weingarten for those powerful remarks. I want to pick up on where she left off. I'm here as a pastor of Faith in Public Life, a network that's 50,000 religious leaders around the country, and I'm here as a mom. And I can say, as a mom, I have worked really hard to keep my son safe. As a kid, I taught him how not to touch a hot stove. I taught him how to look both ways when he was crossing the street. But now he's up against threats on the internet, and the topic of every parent on the playground is how to keep our children safe. How do we keep them safe when they are one click away from dangerous information and information that could damage their mental health? As my son entered his teenage years, I realized that more of the dangers to his health and safety and moral growth were online and in social media. The threats were harder to spot. There was no way I could keep an eye on every single move that a young person would make online. Now I don't have to worry about him burning himself on the stove. I have to worry about him encountering incendiary information online from white supremacy groups, from algorithms that are designed to push hate content. How do we keep our children safe when they are one click away from damaging information? And as a pastor, I am called to shepherd people through danger. to help them embrace truth, to help them build community. And what I find in talking to clergy in our network is they say, we have people 1 or 2 times a week. The internet has them 24/7. How can I shepherd my flock when they are constantly being brainwashed by disinformation on the internet that is unregulated? Disinformation is a threat to our lives and to our freedom, and it flourishes on meta platforms because of the policies that Mark Zuckerberg is implementing and refusing to put restrictions and regulations. We can and have to make better decisions. My faith tradition teaches me that you will know the truth and the truth will set you free. We have an obligation to confront leaders like Mark Zuckerberg. We also have an obligation to create a society in which truth, in fact, flourish and disinformation is held in check. If we recognize this truth and help set social media free from white supremacist tyranny that would spread hate online, resulting in what happened in Buffalo last week, then we will all be free. My son's generation and the vulnerable communities everywhere across this country need you, Mark, to do the right thing. Take your hands off your ears, take the blinders off your eyes, and do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dr. Kavita Patel was supposed to join us today. She sends her deep apologies, but she was unable at the last minute to make it. I give you Rob Weissman, President of Public Citizen.
Thanks, Emily. So I want to talk for a minute about why we are rallying today to make Mark listen. Make Mark listen. What do we mean by make Mark listen? Let's talk about Mark for a minute. Why are we talking about Mark when what we're concerned about is Facebook and Meta? We're talking about Mark because Mark Zuckerberg is not just the founder of the company, a publicly traded company. He exerts complete control over the company. He has set up the company so that although many people own shares in it, he makes all the decisions. The shareholders do not make the decisions as we near the shareholder meeting. Mark Zuckerberg makes the decisions. So it's Mark we have to focus on. That's the Mark and make Mark listen. What about this listen issue? Why do we need Mark to listen? We need Mark to listen because he has not listened. The things that we've heard about today, he has been told, but he does not listen. He knows about how Facebook has contributed to genocide, but he did not listen and do anything about it. He knows how Facebook enables hate speech, facilitates and spreads hate speech. He knows, he's been told, but he didn't do anything about it because he didn't listen. He knows very, very well, the Facebook whistleblower has taught us, about how Instagram posts have done exactly what President Weingarten said, contributed to eating disorders, self-image issues for girls, suicide ideation, and actual suicide. He knows it, his own data has showed it, but he hasn't done anything about it because he hasn't listened. He knows how Facebook was used to facilitate the insurrection, the most serious assault on American democracy since the Civil War. He knows it. We all know it. His own internal board has showed him it, but he hasn't done anything about it because he doesn't listen. He knows how Facebook, Instagram, and his other properties have become tools to spread conspiracy thinking that is tearing this country and this world apart. He's seeing it happen in front of his eyes. We all are. He knows what his company is doing and not doing to enable, permit, and force that to happen. He's been told, but he's not doing anything about it because he's not listening. So we come today to say, Mark, you're the one in control, and you must listen. Make Mark listen. Make Mark listen. Not please Mark listen. Not Mark, it's time to listen. Not Mark, can you hear us? Make Mark listen. Because Mark will not listen on his own. He must be made to listen. And that means the government must impose controls, limits, restraints, and structural remedies on what Facebook, Meta, and Mark Zuckerberg are able to do. Mark is not going to do it on his own. We've seen that over and over. He knows what's happened. He's very good at apologizing, by the way. He's very good at apologizing for past harms, but he won't do anything to change the behavior of his corporation, except find the next way to surveil more, gather more data, combine more, acquire somebody else, and do whatever he needs to do to make more money. Make more money, Mark gets. Make Mark listen, not so much. So the time is now, on a bipartisan basis, as Americans from different points of view understand the threat that Facebook and Meta pose to American democracy, American civility, and American well-being, for the Congress to break up Facebook, for the Congress to impose privacy rules on Facebook, for the Congress to demand that Facebook adopt civil rights principles to address the rise in hate speech that Facebook has enabled. That is what we are going to, how we are going to make Mark listen. Now, one other thing that Mark Zuckerberg has turned out to be pretty good at, in addition to apologizing, is running lots of ads in Washington, D.C., talking about his deep commitment to reform, while running grassroots groups under front groups around the country to disable reform. But the jig is up on that too. There's too much momentum now. There's too many harms from Facebook. There's too much clarity about those harms. There's too much proof that Facebook will not reform itself. So the time is now on us when the Congress is going to adopt these reforms, and we, in fact, are going to make Mark listen. Thanks, everybody.